Gloom is a very simple one-phase stationary boss. The fight itself is not very dangerous. There are only a few one-shots that you need to worry about that are very well telegraphed. The main challenge of this fight is going to be having enough damage to take the boss down in time. Gloom has a 90% damage reduction that is active for most of the boss fight with phases of vulnerability. Before that, let's get into the attacks that exist throughout most of the fight, most notably the meteors you see raining down. There are 3 different colors: blue, pink, and purple. Blue is a stun, purple is a zombify, and pink is darkness. Next, the tornadoes you see rising from the purple swirls on the ground. These only spawn while Gloom's shield is currently up. Then the single tentacle hit. This is a non-lethal attack, but in chaos it does 99% HP, and it is telegraphed by a pink beam going across your screen. Currently in GMS, the tentacle is actually wider than the pink beam, but that will be changed in the future. Now for the most important part, the vulnerability phase. Starting at about 29 minutes and 5 seconds, Gloom is going to open up his tentacles in the middle and reveal his core being vulnerable. A message will appear in the top center of your screen, and Gloom will do 2 diagonal tentacle attacks that are much stronger than the regular tentacles. This is where you can do full damage to Gloom, and the only thing you need to worry about are the meteors coming from the sky. Even so, it is nearly impossible to die to meteors alone. However, it is still important to dodge them, seeing as their status effects will serve to slow your DPS down significantly. Now here it is worth noting that regular binds don't do anything to Gloom. However, the Origin bind is capable of bypassing any normal bind immunities. Doing so at the right time can actually end up skipping one of the most dangerous parts about the Gloom boss fight, which is after the vulnerability phase, when Gloom is normally supposed to do a blue laser beam down the center of the screen that slowly sucks you in with a pull effect. In the footage on the screen, you can see how this phase is normally supposed to end. The tentacles retract, and now Gloom starts charging up the laser beam. Once the blue circle touches, laser beam starts. Touching it is an instant kill, and the laser beam is a little bit bigger than the animation suggests. Now you might see that most of my screen is dark. This is what happens when the fear meter maxes out. The meter fills up naturally over time, but getting hit by Gloom's attacks fills it up by small little chunks. This is easily the most dangerous part of the Gloom fight, but is still easily counterable. The way you counter it is just never stop moving. Minions are going to constantly be spawning during this, and they inflict various status effects on you. The most dangerous being these stationary hands you can see that are invincible and will inflict you with the petrify, where you need to spam left and right. But that actually requires you to stand in front of them for enough time for them to attack you with it, which is not too difficult to just keep moving and never get hit by it. Sometimes this phase is going to happen at the vulnerability phase, which in that case, again, no meteors are going to spawn, but the hands can grab you from below if the tentacles are low enough, and again, you just don't want to let the minions afflict you with status effects because you don't want to lose DPS. As for when the vulnerability phases happen, as I said, the first one starts at about 29 minutes and 5 seconds, or to 10 seconds. It varies a little bit. After that, they happen every minute after the last one, but there are also HP thresholds for both difficulties where Gloom will open up regardless of the time. This can result in you having back-to-back vulnerability phases, which can be very good if you have a very long-lasting burst. Now that the basics of Gloom are out of the way, it is time for some unstructured talk on just how to do this boss fight efficiently. When the vulnerability phase is starting, I mentioned that Gloom does 2 tentacle attacks across the screen, and they are platforms. Now these can be at various angles, and they can be dodged in multiple different ways. You can duck them, you can just outright get out of the way, but my preferred method is to do an up jump. It takes a little bit of timing, but it is very forgiving, especially when it is a very low tentacle like that one was. No matter what method you use, the important thing is that you're trying to make use of that time, because you see, the moment the vulnerability phase starts, and that includes the tentacles attacking, Gloom is already vulnerable. Best case scenario is you saw the vulnerability phase coming, already debuffed Gloom if you have a debuff, and started to pop your burst so you can be attacking immediately the moment the tentacles start. At worst, you should be popping your burst cooldowns while the tentacles are attacking and you are dodging them. And under no circumstance should you be popping burst cooldowns after both tentacles have already attacked, because that is a lot of DPS time wasted. What's worse is the blue laser beam is part of the vulnerability phase, so you should be attacking during this too. You do that safely just by jumping up and down repeatedly and attacking backwards. And if you're hit with a blue meteor, you're very likely going to die from the stun. Now as for where to stand when the vulnerability phase starts, that is up to you. If your class can reach the core from the ground, you can stay on the ground. However, while the meteors do have a further distance to travel, when you're up on the tentacles, you can actually see the meteors as they're spawning, and that can give you a better indication of where you need to stand. Just know that if you deploy anything like summons up on the tentacles, when they retract, they will go away. As for the darkness phase, I mentioned that moving is the best counter to this phase, and that is true. Moving is the best way to counter it. However, should you find yourself in a bad position where maybe you got hit by one of the status effects, and that tends to breed even more. Remember, Hero's Will is 3 seconds of status immunity. Nothing can be applied to you in those 3 seconds. And given Gloom's level, you'll likely have your second one from the V matrix at this point. point, and Gloom is honestly a pretty damn good boss to use as training wheels for learning to use Hero's Will better. And that is really all there is to know about the Gloom boss fight. I mean, as I said, very simple boss, still has a few dangerous mechanics, and it's pretty easy to get either bored or complacent and get yourself killed by one of them. And with that, there's really nothing else to say about this boss. I mean, if you can do chaos, sometimes the fights can be long, but it is absolutely worth it. We're talking about a pretty big chunk of meso, Ozring boxes, arcane boxes, and even possibility of a pitch boss accessory. It's not the kind of boss you want to skip out on just because it might take a while. With that, good luck fighting Gloom yourself and good luck getting drops, because it never gives me its ring. Hardly even gives me arcane boxes. But in any case, thank you for watching, thank you to my members and patrons for supporting me as always, and I'll see you in the next one.